right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert. And we have Alex Magoob doing the interview today, and we have a great guest. Minna, I forgot, what is your last name, Minna?
Taylor.
Perfect. And, you know, in this whole era of Zoom meetings, which we're doing right now, and live on Facebook, how do you project your voice? What do you do? What's it all about? And Minna is going to help us with that. So Alex, take it away. And I always love these, Minna, because I get to be the sidekick, inserting jokes here and there.
This better be really funny, Martin. Like you just set yourself up for high expectations there.
I know, right?
He's a great Ed McMahon.
But then I said, keep the change.
Minna, thank you so much for being here. Minna Taylor is an amazing friend of mine. I've known Minna for how long? Over a decade, right? Truly extraordinary. So Minna is an expert communication coach. She's been doing this forever. She knows everything that there is to know about communication. So I thought it'd be really great. Truly, you do. I mean, you guys are going to see an action-packed interview here with a dynamic superstar.
That's much better than introducing her as a voice person. Communication coach. I love that.
Communication coach. It really is. Minna,
somebody didn't read their briefing materials today, and that is me. Okay.
And McMahon. Minna, how are you today?
I am doing great. I just mentioned to you that I just got back from a run, and Thursdays, I always love Thursdays. I have an incredible standing client Thursday morning. So it gets me up. We, do some exercises, we get going. I put myself in a mindset of confidence and allow her to step into a mindset of confidence. And so Thursdays always feel pretty like rock star days for me.
Cool. Well, let's share that mindset of confidence with everyone who's watching today. So I want to talk more about your company. How did you come to start Energize Your Voice?
It started kind of as an accident. It started like a lot of great companies out of necessity, out of just sort of an appetite from the industry that I was assessing. I started as an actor, so let's start there.
I was just going to say, you have an acting background. That was my...
Yeah. I do. Nailed it. Haha. Yes. So I actually have my master's degree in acting. And I like to say that I have my master's degree in the art of storytelling and truth telling. And so I took all of these underlying principles when I was starting out as an actor. I never waited tables. I coached accent reduction and presentation skills for corporate clients. That was my support job.
Wow, that was good.
And I was,
go ahead.
It was a good one, right? And I learned so much, and it really allowed me to apply what I'd learned in my 6 years of very intensive training as an actor in a different way, right? So allowed me to apply it in real world scenarios outside of an artistic context. And what I saw there was very similar things to what we've seen as actors were developing, which is a resistance or habits around not being able to fully release or step into a space of authentic, expressive expression of the essential self, right? So working through all of that, eventually I started getting asked to coach more, do workshops, and I was realizing, okay, I'm having to put a lot of focus there. And then ultimately I, through sort of my 6 or 7 years of coaching, developed a methodology. And then when I booked a national commercial, it gave me the financial freedom to quit all of my other various support jobs, which were cleaning houses, teaching kickboxing, walking dogs, like everything.
What was the national commercial?
And really,
can you tell?
It was for, yeah, I can. It was for TD Ameritrade. And, and it played during the Super Bowl. And it was, I'm in the first, literally 4 seconds of it. And it's called We're Spiking Things, Robbie. And I pick up a phone. I'm on the phone with Robbie Gould. I'm on the phone with customers every day, so like, and then I'm so freaking satisfied that I pick up the phone and I spike it like a football. And that's what I did for an entire day when we were filming. I just got to spike this phone. They had 2 breakaway phones, and I did that all day. It was so fun.
Wow.
So that was my catalyst into energize your voice.
That's 3 o'clock for me every day.
Yeah, throw it on the phone. But I think you bring voice to something really powerful, is that we are constantly expressing ourselves, and we hire actors to show tremendous expression because they've studied their body, their instrument, and they can go to those places and get us to, you know, use a product or service. So I kind of want to start unpacking some of this, because it's clear you're a pro. I feel your energy. I hear your voice. And I had this crazy situation happen to me yesterday where I was on a showing with a real estate professional, and she was wearing a mask, and every time she talked, it sounded like this. And I would say, excuse me? And my client would say, excuse me. And then, it would, you know, every time she spoke, it was like, what did you say? You know, so for everyone that's watching, I want to leave people with a couple of maybe ideas or quick tips. How can we be heard when we're wearing something that is obstructing our mouth? Thoughts?
Great. Yeah, I have very specific thoughts about that. The first thing I'll share in relationship to this, as I go to share my 2 thoughts on this very specific example, is you say people hire actors to help with all of this. It's because we're trained. So the way that I communicate, the way that I express myself did not happen by accident. I am not somebody that just has this natural way of being. It is a very studied, intentional process of building habits around expression, right? So I have a very clear voice practice. I have a very clear speech practice. I have a very clear way of analyzing scripts that I can attack it with a sense of objectivity and purpose. So all of that is learned behavior. So I want to say, first of all, that any of the tools, any of the practices that you are open to exploring, that you're currently exploring, that you might be embarking on exploring, it's all about practice ultimately, and it's skill building. It will not happen because of your good intentions. It takes consistency, intentionality, because the practice is the key. It literally is the art of practice. So that's the first thing I'll say as I set up this idea. So when we're talking about the masks that are covering your face, we're losing a couple of things there. So first of all, when we're talking about receiving communication, 93% of what we receive is nonverbal. So we're talking about facial expressiveness and vocal expressiveness in this case. Now, when we limit our nonverbal information, which is our mouth, we're limiting a few different things, but mostly what we're limiting is the ability to see the articulation mechanism at work. So to be able to not only hear the words, but to also read them as they're happening. Now, because we're missing that huge piece of nonverbal information, we as a speaker need to be more attentive to integrating that in an intentional way. What that means is really being very conscientious about nailing your consonant sounds. And I know that sounds very particular. All that ultimately means is enunciate. Get clear. And here's why. Here's why.
Right.
So vowels are our emotional sounds. Ooh, ah, right? There are emotional sounds. Consonants are our structure. So they provide structure and containers for those vowels. So as I'm speaking, if I'm already prone to mumbling, it's going to be even more exacerbated through that mask. But now if I really put a heightened intention into really clarifying the articulation of my consonant sounds, it will allow for a clarity of structure, and thereby what's received on the other side of that mask will have a greater likelihood of being heard in the exact words. So there's no delay of interpretation. Now, The second piece of that, which is an extension, this is getting very technical, but I think it's important. The piece of that that's an extension there is vocal presence. So the more vocally present you are, the more you'll now be able to reach your speaker. So it's similar to when we're talking on Zoom. I'm not just talking to my camera, I have to talk through my camera. Similarly, I'm not just talking at my mask, I have to speak through my mask. And I have to think about meeting the person with my voice, because voice is what we hear, vibration is what we create. So if we think about what we're actually creating as something substantive, I can now meet my listener with something that's tangible. So I have to think about actually reaching them with that substantive quality of expression of thought. So if I'm committed to the consonant or articulation of my thoughts, the voice will follow suit. The vocal presence will be there inherently. And then everything will be able to extend beyond the mask with a sense of clarity. So it's not only the mumbling, it's also the vocal presence. So heightening articulation and speaking with a little bit greater sense of purpose.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I'm jotting down a bunch of notes here because I'm a great student. And I think you hit on a couple.
He is actually. It's just funny.
I'm a hard worker. But I just want to make sure that people walk away with tangible kind of action steps. And the first takeaway that I got from you is that this isn't a one-off. You can't say, I want a better voice, and then one day practice, and then you have a better voice forever. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? If you want to lose 10 pounds, you kind of have to make it a practice. You know, go to the gym.
Well, ultimately, why that's the case is because I'm glad you brought up the gym, is because it's muscle memory. So you cannot will yourself into fitness. You cannot will yourself into heightened states of presence and communication. It's muscle memory, whether that's cognition, whether that's how our breath mechanism operates, whether that's our state of being and presence of self. It's muscle memory. So it has to have consistent, thoughtful, intentional exposure. How we use it, this is a very technical term again, but we call it conscious redirection of use. So just as when we're learning how to run long distances and we're sort of getting clear on what that means, how do I lift weights effectively? How do I take a Zumba class and feel like I can engage in those movements in a way that feels meaningful, where I'm not only getting a good workout, I also feel sassy doing it, you know? The same thing is going to apply when it comes to public speaking, right? First, it's about, okay, now first I need to dust off the cobwebs and be like, okay, I'm doing it. And then I can be like, okay, I'm doing it. And then it can be like, yes, we're doing it, right? So it's a stage of evolution, but it is all about saying, how can I consciously understand where I'm at, where I'm limited, and how to move beyond those habits in an intentional, thoughtful way.
Absolutely. And someone like you obviously can help with that. You know, so you said a couple of other things I just want to make sure people walk away with, because it was getting a little bit technical. And for all of our viewers, I also have an acting background. I studied acting and voice and speech for a few years. You know, so a lot of times I'll meet people and they'll say, oh, you have such a great voice, or like, you have such a great energy about you. And it's something that is cultivated over years. You know, I met a guy a few weeks ago and he was like, you're so charming. How do I learn that? And I'm like, I don't know. It took 30 years.
No acting class can teach that, Alex.
Yeah, you know, but it's just really interesting. People think that you can change immediately and you go from 0 to 100 and it's not that quick, you know? So you said a couple of other things I thought were
well, how I'll just sort of support that, which probably leans into what you're about to contextualize here, is to give people an understanding. At 18, when I came to New York to go to NYU, my voice was up here, so I talked like a lot higher, and I had a Southern accent. So just those two things, over the course of the first year, without me intentionally doing it, but through the consistency of speech practice and voice practice, by the end of the year, I had completely transformed the way in which I communicate.
Wow.
So it's possible, but it takes consistency. So I talked like this when I first came to New York. This was me. Like, I'd be like, hi, I'm Nina. right? And then it's like, it totally transformed by the end of the year.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
spectacular. And similar to you, I remember when I used to order Starbucks, I'd be like, excuse me, can I have a venti iced coffee? And now when I walk in, I'm like, can I have a venti iced coffee? And people are like, who's that guy? You know, it's like this work can be super powerful and just unlock so much expression. But I want to go back to this woman from yesterday. You know what? She was not hitting her consonants. She was not really, truly trying to communicate to us. Honestly, I felt like she didn't care, you know? So you mentioned something about having the thought that you want your voice to reach us. You want your expression to be heard. I don't think she cared. I think she says the same thing every day, many times, and she was just throwing it out. So I think even—
Well, okay. What I'll say about that is the perception in that kind of communication is that she doesn't care. That's the important distinction. She may care, but your receiving of the way in which she was communicating gave you the impression that she didn't care. That's the important thing to remember. Whether you're in a sales capacity, a customer experience capacity, whatever it is, however you're functioning through these communication platforms, whether it's in person or virtually, you need to give people the impression. I say people don't, care deeply, right? You have to step into that. You have to, don't give so much of a shit, pardon my French, right? So how people perceive you, their opinions of you doesn't really matter. But if I care deeply about giving you this information, about making sure that you hear it, about making sure that you find value in this interaction every single time, that's got to be my intention. And what I always tell my clients, especially to Alex, to this point that you're expressing, she's probably said it a million times, make old information sound new. Because you might have said it 100 times, but this might be the first time that somebody else is hearing it. So every time you go into a sales pitch, or you say your name or the name of your company, make it sound new, make it sound fresh, make it sound alive, make sure it lands, right? It's like, that is the key information. If they walk away with nothing else, that's what they need to hear. So you have to make sure it's heard. And that's, again, that is not a passive experience.
Wow.
So that is not an unintentional, accidental communication interaction. So this woman, she might have cared. She might have just not even known about the concept of stepping into it, right?
Yeah,
but you perceived it as a lack of engagement.
Yeah,
That's really insightful.
Yeah, you make a great point. I think sometimes people operate in the world and they're not aware of how they're coming across, and I really, I said multiple times, I cannot hear you. I don't understand you. I don't know though, if she walked away like, what can I do to be a more effective communicator? But because we're talking about a lot of things I think could be helpful, I want you, because you kind of already did it. Are there any things that we can do in regards to warm up to get either one, more vocal energy? Because you mentioned, having the voice reach the other person through the mask. So what can we do about the vocal energy? And then what can we do about enunciating better, pronunciation better, using our mouths that no one will see?
I'm so glad you asked.
Is this like,
Okay.
Is this what you do every day?
She was ready. She was like literally chomping at the bit. She was like,
Let me at it. Yeah, so there's a much bigger warm up that I teach my clients. So like I mentioned, I practice in a vocal practice. It's a voice, body, breath practice. And it takes about an hour to do the thing in its entirety. When I work with my clients, I sort of distill down key elements of that to customize a mini practice for them. And then when I'm working with larger groups, I have a 3-step warm-up process that I teach them. For our purposes right now, I'll extract 2 of those that are really simple for people to work on, not only presence of voice, but also articulation. So the first one comes in 2 parts. So it's a really basic lip buzz. So we're going to put our lips together.
Like a horse, right?
Yep. Exactly. Now, here's the key. We're going to hold that for a count of 10. So we're going to sustain it on a 10 count. What you might notice there at the end is that you might feel like you're squeezing out every last bit of breath. So the goal is ultimately, when you practice, how can you do this as effortlessly as possible? Because speaking should be as easy as breathing. So let's make sure that our breath can leave our bodies with purpose as effortlessly as possible. So I'll demonstrate for you what this looks like on a count of 10, okay? So notice I'm not, you know, muscling it. Speaking should be as easy as breathing, right? So let's make it easy. So on a count of 10, that's how we're going to do it. So that works with breath control and ease of breathing. Now, to work on the way that the voice actually goes, we're going to use the same principle to lip buzz, but we're going to start at the bottom of our range, move all the way up, which means we're going to actually have to pop into the head voice, which will not feel natural, but I urge you to try to kick it up there. And that's not through trying, that's through allowing the breath to grant access. So the higher you go, the deeper you breathe. And then we're going to come back down. I'm actually going to use my finger here intentionally, see if I can push you back a little, to follow so that I can mark my progress. So if I continually stop here, I know that. Oh, look, I finally got up there. Okay, great. Oh, no, I ran out of breath here. So it allows you to really understand how you're navigating this. So I'll demonstrate what this looks like. This may sort of blow out the speakers a little bit. So actually, maybe I'll take this off.
Wow.
So we're starting low, going all the way up, and then coming back down.
Can we do these?
So that's for voice and breath. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah,
Sure.
let's do it. I'll be on mute though, but I love it. That's just that like arc is you hear. I remember doing that as a kid all the time. Like you were running around or pretending you're like an airplane. You're like, right?
And Martin, something you said there that was key is it's playful. It should feel playful and alive and just sort of expressive without consequence. That's what play is. Amazing. Yeah, let's give it a try. So we'll start all the way down and then go all the way up and then come back down. Try it in your own time.
I'm failing.
Well, what we notice is we probably run out of breath potentially, or we invite tension potentially. So that is not to judge. That's not anything that you're doing wrong, but it's worthwhile building curiosity around to say, how can I do less to allow for more in that moment, right? So that's what it is. And then ultimately, the last thing I'll say here for articulation, so that's breath, that's voice, and then for articulation, ain't nothing better than a good old-fashioned tongue twister. So my favorite is Peter Piper. I give this one to all my clients. And it's great because, I'm going to get too technical here, but the sound is a really great sound. It's called a stop plosive. So it has a very clear structure and very clear expressive quality to it. So I'm going to do this in two different ways. I'm going to do this for articulation, and then I'm going to do this with articulation plus vocal expressiveness. So we can see how articulation can lend itself to making intentional choices around the way in which we play the music of our thoughts. So here's the first one just for articulation. Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers did Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, pick. Now, if Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked a peck of pickled peppers, where is the peck of pickled peppers that Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked? So we have a few different things happening there, particularly final consonants. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. we have final consonants there, which, Alex, to this woman that you're using an example, the final consonants are the key, because that says one word is complete, another word is starting. So to our listener, it signals clarity of how we receive each word to put them together as thoughts, right? So Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked a peck of pickled pepper. No, Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker. So we're completing every single word in its entirety. So that's the first thing when it comes to articulation. Now, how do we add on vocal expressiveness? Why I like Peter Piper is because it has a lot of opportunity to play around, all right? So I'll just sort of play it randomly as I would, right? Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers did Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, pick. Now, if Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked a peck of pickled peppers, where is a peck of pickled peppers that Peter Piper, the pickled pepper picker, picked? So it gives us a lot of space to play.
That's awesome.
Number one, I think we're getting like a little bit of an insight for what working with you is like. And it's just, number one, so much fun. You're really talented. And
Alex, I think this is our funnest one we've had ever.
It really is. It's so engaging and exciting. And you've given us
Even Jared is interested. He's never interested in
I know. Usually he turns off the computer and takes a nap during this time. I've never seen him so happy before. This gave us, like, I think, a great exercise for us to play with. We could Google tongue twisters, pick a few that we like, and just, you know, I kind of look at a lot of the exercises you described as like stretching. The way we would stretch before a run and kind of warm up our body. We should do this every day that we're alive. You wake up, you yawn, you stretch, you mess with your voice, you know, and then that kind of warms up everything for you to express yourself, you know, for you to be warmed up so people can hear everything you're saying and feel your energy and your intention. And you know, we're running
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. We're running out of time.
Well, yeah.
Are you gonna say something?
No. Go.
Alex is trying to do the wrap up.
Well, no. Well, like
I know. I'm sorry.
You touched on something that I think is so powerful here, and maybe Martin encouraged you to touch on it. This idea of play, and I think and you mentioned with the airplane sound, Martin. You know, kids. They can be, you know, they can have a serious voice, they can have a fun voice, they can have a loud voice, they can have a quiet voice. But somehow when we get older, we lose a lot of this ability. So what are your thoughts on just play? What would you say to anyone listening about play?
Let's first explain what play is. Play is not unserious. So let's be very clear about that. Play implies strategy, implies decision-making, implies intentionality, right? Implies agility. So all of these things culminate in the notion of play. Play also means creativity and innovative thinking and opening up your mind beyond a very specific rigid context to move outside of that to see what's possible. So that's what play is about in terms of its practical adult application. When people think of play, it is not unserious. It is, in fact, very serious business. So I want to get very clear about that. But when we think about incorporating play, it can happen in very simple ways. And I think the voice is a really interesting access point for that. So you can essentially start to make choices about how you strategically navigate certain conversations, right? So for example, this conversation, I can make choices about how my voice is going to interact. And I know that'll have certain impacts on you. But ultimately, Alex, what I want you to recognize. So I can start making choices, right, about how my voice operates, and it becomes playful. It becomes like a character. And that's really how you can start incorporating play, but you can do it in very simple ways also. The body is a great access point. So move it in different ways than you're accustomed to, right? When's the last time you really did something that just felt totally, you know, purposeless? And how can you start exploring that, right? Essentially, it's talking about moving outside of your comfort zone in small ways that are low stakes, low consequence, that break you open from a very rigid mold to which you are likely habituated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nailed it. Well said, really. Okay, so we've done a lot here in 29 minutes. How can people work with you? How can I work with you? Because I loved every second of this.
I did too.
And
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad.
Buy one, give one. I want to finish with that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So most of our business that we do, we're pretty select around our private clients and who we work with. We work with high performers, executives, emerging leaders who are really just looking to excel and accelerate their level of confidence, presence, and performance. Really how we work is with companies. So we'll work in a B2B capacity around elevating employee engagement and team performance and executive and leadership presence. And we do that in a 3, 6, or 12-month engagement with a mixture of private coaching and group training around public speaking, presentation skills, and storytelling fundamentals. So that's how we work with our corporate clients. Now, what we're doing with our buy one, give one, and thanks for bringing that up, Alex, is any of our corporate partners that enroll in a program, we then gift a hyper-local nonprofit and the community that they serve a half-day training. So it's literally a buy one, give one, creating democratized access to high quality professional development training for the communities and organizations that need it the most, but can't afford it. So that's really what our buy one, give one is in service of doing, is democratizing that access, because at the end of the day, education is what leads to equity. And so this is our way of really bringing professional development into that space. And if you want to learn more, you can follow us on Instagram at Energize Your Voice, or of course, check out our website, energizeyourvoice.net. Shoot us a little message. I'll get back to you.
Minna,
wow. This has been great.
A miracle worker. I think you delivered. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and knowledge and your fun energy. And we'll be sure to check you out. Energize Your Voice, Minna Taylor. Thanks again.
Minna,
Gratitude,
thank you so
everyone.
much. Everybody,
you're so welcome.
Yay!